Hi, I'm Joe Elliott from the Down N Outz. Thanks for watching my nights with Alice Cooper Ask Anything Chat. Thanks to Alice, of course, and to United Stations for having me on to talk about the new album. This is how we roll. Okay, David from Jackson in Mississippi. Did I have a vision for this album? Well, yes and no. We weren't really sure what kind of record we were going to make, but we were always going to make a third album. I think the initial conversations over a couple of pints of beer were, okay, third album of covers. Who would we cover? Wings, 10cc, ELO, I don't know. And then we moved on to like, why don't we actually write some songs? So I said, okay, I'll give me a couple of months and I'll see what I can come up with. And I basically ended up writing a ton of songs on the piano, which gave this album its kind of identity, very different to something that, say, Def Leppard would do. So there was always a vision up here. I just had to kind of whirl it around a little bit before it kind of became obvious how I wanted it to be. Fran from Columbus, Ohio asks, who has the best birthday parties? Well, probably Keith Moon did back in the 70s. I have decent ones, but only about every 10 years. I don't really know many people that throw birthday parties. And if they did, they're normally on tour. You know, if Viv's birthday was on tour, my birthday would have been on tour. It was Rick Allen's birthday a few days ago. We weren't together. So when it comes to my world, I throw the best birthday parties. Sherry from Fayetteville asks, how does it feel to be a huge part of people's lives? Well, I suppose it's quite flattering, really. I know it also sounds quite narcissistic to say this, but it's all you've kind of crave as a musician. You start out as a teenager watching other people do it, and then as a late teenager into your early 20s, if you're lucky, you actually start doing it, and then you want to keep doing it forever, like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Paul McCartney and the Aerosmiths and the AC/DCs and the Bon Jovis of this world. It's flattering. It's absolutely flattering. It's flattering to be around for 42 years and still be able to sell the amount of tickets we sell and seem to be as important as people hold us, or the kind of regard that we're held in, is an astonishing feat, and it makes you feel kind of all tingly and warm inside. Christine from Kansas City asks, who's got the best tattoos in the Down N Outz? To my knowledge, there's only myself and Phil Martini, the drummer, that's got any. Shazza's got some. I'd say probably Cher, the bass player. She's probably got the best tattoos because she's a girl, so they look even more cool on a girl. Jessica from Wichita asks what inspired us to go back into the studio to record this third album, This Is How We Roll. Well, the fact is that we just, we are now a legitimate side band for myself and for everybody else. You got to remember, I'm in Def Leppard, 3 of the guys are in the Choir Boys, Shazza is in Vixen, and Phil Martini is in the Wayward Sons. And when we do have a few spare minutes, we like to get together and make music. We've made 2 records. We've done the Mott the Hoople tribute thing to Death. I really, once we got our head around the idea of doing it, wanted to make an album that would stand on its own 2 feet and show that there's more to this band than just covering other people's songs. So I think the inspiration to just see what we could do. It's just the challenge. I've got one aspect of working with Def Leppard, and then I've got the other aspect of working with the Down N Outz, and they're 2 very different scenarios. Even though the music is still under the umbrella of rock and roll, you can't imagine a Def Leppard writing session around a piano, but there was lots of them on the Down N Outz, and that's the distinguishing difference between the 2. So it's just a kind of an ambition and to just see what you can come up with. Erica from Miami asks, will there be a 2020 Down N Outz tour? The simple answer to that is probably not. When you say a tour, and a tour that would go as far as Miami, it's highly unlikely, but we always say never say never. I've actually just been filling in sheets of paper with little squares numbered 1 to 31 with the months above them, and putting big red crosses where nobody's available, and the whole thing is filled with red crosses because Def Leppard are going to be busy, the Choir Boys, Vixen and the Wayward Sons are going to be very busy over the next 6 to 9 months. So the earliest that we could possibly do any shows is November 2020. which will be a good 13 months since this album came out. If something rears its head and it seems doable, then it's always a possibility, but it would more than likely be a UK tour. Kelly from Knoxville is pretty much asking, where did we get the name of the album title from, This Is How We Roll? The story behind the actual phrase, not that I invented it by any means, it's kind of a common enough statement, but the band were in Sheffield, and my birth town, watching back a private showing of the first ever gig that we played back in 2009 at Hammersmith Odeon, which was at the time going to be the only gig that we ever played. So we had it filmed for posterity. It did eventually come out as a very limited release on DVD. And we were watching a private screening of it in a bar, and Guy Griffin, the rhythm guitarist, snuggled up next to me with a whiskey in his hand, and he just kind of nudged me and he just pointed at the screen and he said, "This is how we roll." And I just made a mental note thinking, that's a great phrase. And when I wrote the song, and I managed to get that to fit in the chorus pretty well, it just became logical. Was the story, the song itself is about how the band met, how we got together, like the opening line, I'm thrown together like rats in a cage. They were a suggestion, the Choir Boys, that is, to be my backing band. I didn't pick them. It was just like, these guys will work with you. I went, okay, let's see how it works out. So it was a blind date, if you like, which was a lot of fun and worked out really well, because 10 years later, here we still are together, or the majority of us. And once the song came together, and the song was the story of the band, and this album is a self-written album, it just seemed logical that we would call the album name that song This Is How We Roll, and that would become the title track. So the album became This Is How We Roll, because this is literally how we roll. This is what we do. So Rose from Toronto is asking if there are any hidden talents in the Down N Outz band. Well, no, I think all their musical talents are on. They're right on the surface, because they're all phenomenally great musicians and such a pleasure to work with. Paul Gearing, the lead guitarist, is a practical joker who likes to, one example, break into somebody's hotel room, lay under their bed for a good 7 or 8 hours, motionless until they come into their room, and then pretty much just scream boo when they turn the lights off, as he did to Keith, the keyboard player, who probably shat his pants. So, yeah, they all like a drink, but Paul he loves a good joke, and a good practical joke. So that's about it. Thanks to Alice Cooper for having me on the show to answer your Ask Anything questions. Hopefully we can do this again one day down the road, either Def Leppard or Down N Outz, and maybe I'll see you on the road. Definitely Def Leppard, maybe one day with the Down N Outz. Fingers crossed.